Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing a top 10. The topic of the top 10, Unresolved Storylines in Wrestling. Now this is where they started or teased something and just didn't give us a conclusion. With that being said, we're not going to include things like, say, Muhammad Hassan, who, even though the storyline was ended abruptly, they did give an ending. So even if we didn't like it, doesn't mean it was unresolved. We're talking about the storylines that didn't have no answer to them. With that being said, coming in at number 10, what was CM Punk going to say about Vince McMahon's bullying in his infamous pipe bomb? Everybody knows the pipe bomb promo. If you're watching this show, I'd be willing to bet you've seen it 1,000 times already. In the promo, he talks about everything from Ring of Honor to New Japan to Colt Cabana. We get to the end, and we know he's already touched on subjects that were considered taboo. And they cut his promo off when he talks about their Be a Star anti-bullying movement, and is going to say a story about Vince McMahon. It's never paid off as to what that story would be. Now, I've heard that Punk has said in interviews he was just riffing off the top of his head with that. So there may have never been an actual story. He may have just made something up. But I feel like a cliffhanger like that should have been something that should have been resolved. Someone at some point should have said, hey, what were you talking about with the bullying? Or maybe there could have been an ally to CM Punk that said, I was bullied by Vince McMahon too. And that's where we get the story. But anyway, since they never told us what that story was, that's why this made this list. Now our number 9. There were a lot of failed things in Kenta's WWE run. I don't think they ever quite used him properly. While he was Hideo Itami in NXT, Kenta was attacked to sell an injury. Now the story is that they thought he was going to heal quicker than he did. By the time he healed, what they had planned, all the wrestlers that may have been involved were already called up to the main roster. With that being said, this could have been a good story arc for him. This could have been a good way to bring him back. Like I said before, talking about the story, Hideo Itami, aka Kenta, never really had that great story or that great push in WWE. And maybe this could have been it. This could have been his chance to really shine when giving a WWE-style storyline. Since we never found out who the attacker was, we don't know what the story was going to be, so therefore, it makes this list. Now our number 8. Probably the one that intrigues me the most. It's been teased that he was going to talk about it on his podcast, and that's Raven's 7 Deadly Sins. We seen on Sunday night, Heat, where Raven was relegated to Heat, and he kind of made it his personal playground. He started doing a 7 Deadly Sins gimmick, and he even got the first sin out, which was greed. Although after that, it never was followed up on. We never figured out what the rest of the sins were. From what I understand, he had a fully written out storyline, and like I said before, I've heard from him on his podcast. At one point he was going to reveal it, but then he didn't. It was a thing where he said, if we get 1,000 likes by this time, I'm going to reveal it. They didn't get the likes, so he didn't reveal. I really would be interested to see what the storyline was going to be, who was going to be involved. Rumors over the years have said Matt Hardy was going to be part of it. They were going to bring an angle with Lita, and that was going to be the Envy, or also the Coveting Thy Neighbor. You know, if you're familiar with the 7 Deadly Sins, you know what they are. I would have been interested to see how that would have kept going on and where that would have took Raven. Maybe that could have brought him back onto one of the main WWE shows if it got a great reaction. Again, another unresolved storyline, another one for our list. Now, our number 7, I'm going to cheat a little bit and put 2 together as one. Vince McMahon's $1 Million Mania, where the stage almost kills him, and also the limo explosion. Both these gimmicks were, the reason I'm putting them together is they both kind of are trying to accomplish the same thing by attempted murder or murdering Vince McMahon, and neither one of them paid off. We never found out why the stage collapsed on Vince. We got a fourth wall break where he called Triple H Paul, and obviously we know why we didn't get the reveal on the limo and who was behind the limo explosion. Unfortunately, real life circumstances took precedent over that storyline, and the less we say about that, the better we are going forward. But with such a big story beat, with such an important character, Vince McMahon, possibly the most important character in WWE history, and I'm just talking about character-wise, not owner-wise. Vince is right up there with anybody from The Undertaker, Stone Cold, Hulk Hogan, whoever you want to put up there. The Vince McMahon character, again, not the owner, the character, is one of the most important characters. So to see a story like this go unresolved is a really big beat for me. And I kind of wanted to know, I know it was going to be stupid. I have a feeling it wasn't going to be great. But you still wanted to see where it was going to go. And unfortunately, due to real life circumstances on one case, and for whatever reason on the other, we never got the answer. Now, our number 6. Who was behind GTV? Obviously, the stories have said, and it's come out, that it was supposed to be Goldust. Goldust gets released. It may have been Tom Green, which was supposedly shot down. However, they never fully revealed who it was. And I thought GTV was interesting. I thought it was a nice addition to the show. It gave us a fly-on-the-wall aspect, where we were used to seeing backstage interviews and backstage interactions. We were used to seeing in-the-ring interaction. GTV felt like, kind of like security camera footage, which was what it was supposed to be, where you're catching people when they're not thinking they're on camera. That's why you can see stuff like Al Snow picking his nose, or Beaver cleavage, and the whole domestic abuse angle on there, and different things. A lot of it was silly. A lot of it helped to move storylines along, and I thought it was an interesting trope to move storylines. What I think they could have done with it, they could have had a character whose career was ruined by GTV go on the rampage trying to find out who was behind it to eventually reveal who was behind it. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. GTV just kind of went away. Like I said, probably mostly because Goldust was released, but they could have flipped that and made it somebody else. They could have gave it to someone else. I mean, they did the anonymous GM to Hornswoggle. I can't imagine that was supposed to be him. They did the Vince McMahon's son to Hornswoggle. Again, I'm pretty sure that was supposed to be Mr. Anderson, Mr. Kennedy, whichever one you want to call him. But, like I said, they could have switched gears, gave this to somebody else. Unfortunately, they didn't. Maybe Bart Gunn. Bart Gunn had a G in his name. Give him something interesting to do. Just saying, it was something that I really enjoyed that I think should have been further fleshed out. Now, our number 5. Samoa Joe being abducted. Again, this is probably in one of TNA's most popular periods, one of their upswings. We had one of their stalwarts, Samoa Joe, multi-time champion, multi-time X Division champion, one of the big stars of the company, gets randomly abducted and thrown into a van for us to never get a resolution. Who abducted Joe? Why was he abducted? Who was behind it? What was it supposed to be? There was no reason for it ever explained. Joe just eventually came back. It just made no sense at all as to why you would do this if there was no payoff for it. It should have been something where Joe had a foe coming out of this, but a lot of people will say this. It was TNA being TNA. I don't like to paint TNA as bad as a lot of people do. There's a lot of great stuff that came out of TNA. In this era specifically, TNA was rather good. Unfortunately, it's the stuff like this. It's the Claire Lynch stuff. It's the Immortal stuff. It's the Abyss Hulk Hogan Hall of Fame ring stuff that people remember more than the great stuff, more than the Samoa Joe AJ Styles matches, more than the Chris Daniels matches, more than the three-way between Joe Daniels and AJ Styles. I mean, this stuff is why people think poorly of TNA, because of stuff like this happen. But I can't say I blame them on this case, because it had the potential to be a big story. Unfortunately, it never was revealed. Coming from that, number 4. What was in Shane McMahon's lockbox? We seen Shane McMahon return to WWE in 2016 in a segment where Stephanie McMahon was getting an award and basically ends up threatening Vince that he's going to have a match at WrestleMania, leads to his match against The Undertaker, and if he wins, he gets control of Monday Night Raw. If Vince wins, he goes away. Well, the way he talked himself into that match was saying he has a lockbox that includes some stuff that Vince doesn't want to get out. It was never revealed. After WrestleMania, Vince kind of gave up on his quasi-feud with his son Shane, brought him back into the fold, and we never seen a resolution to what potentially was in the lockbox. Was it a secret that, was it Vince had an affair? Was it Shane had controlling stake in the company because he had aggressively bought stocks over the years he was gone? Was it potentially a lawsuit or incriminating evidence that proved that Vince knew something about something? Who knows where they were going to go with it, if they ever had a plan to reveal anything. But again, an unresolved storyline, and one that probably at the time, and for this recent generation, now being it's 6 years ago, but during this last decade, that's probably one of the biggest stories that's happened in WWE with no payoff at all. Coming from that, going to our number 3. We haven't had any make this list yet, but we do have one from WCW. And if you're familiar with Unresolved Storylines, you're probably familiar with this one. The white Hummer hitting the limousine with Kevin Nash in it. Now, this was when Kevin Nash was in a feud with Randy Macho Man Savage. Savage lures him into a limousine, only for that limousine to get hit by a white Hummer. We never see to reveal who the Hummer was. There was rumors it was Sid, who debuted about 6 days later, but that was shot down. They specifically said it wasn't him. There was about a year later, Eric Bischoff came out of a similar white Hummer. However, while it was implied that this was the same white Hummer, it wasn't specifically said it was. I believe we were made to think that Bischoff was the driver of the Hummer. However, again, it never played out on screen that yes, he was. And with wrestling, if there's one thing about wrestling storylines, there's little left for subtlety. They will hammer you over the head to make sure you understand that this is why this person did this. So if Bischoff was meant to be the Hummer driver, they would have definitely said Eric Bischoff was the Hummer driver that hit Kevin Nash. That's why a lot of people will say that was the answer. I don't think it was. And I don't know if it was something that they just threw it out there and they're like, yeah, this will get people to shut up about it. But again, like I said, they could have easily said that he was the guy. They never did. They left it ambiguous. So to me, I think they're two separate Hummers, two separate events. With that being said, talking about the number 2, what was in Baby Doll's envelope? We seen Dusty Rhodes was in a feud with Larry Zbyszko, and at the time, Baby Doll was Larry Zbyszko's valet. She produces an envelope with something that's some pictures in it and shows it to Dusty Rhodes, demanding a match for Larry Zbyszko. Dusty looks in the envelope, legitimately looks like he's spooked by what's inside. She gives him a kiss on the cheek, which is termed a kiss of death, and then the storyline's dropped. And Baby Doll gets fired. Now I know they dropped it because Baby Doll was fired, but they never resolved what was in the envelope. Maybe it was an issue of them realizing that blackmailing one of their main babyface stars that the fans loved was probably a bad idea. Maybe it was just the fact that without Baby Doll it doesn't work, which is probably the most logical reason. It still begs to say, what was in that envelope? What in evidence did she have? Did she have proof that her and Dusty had an affair at some point? Did she have proof that Dusty had an affair with somebody else? Was Dusty involved in something he shouldn't have been? Was he secretly helping the Four Horsemen back in the day? The list goes on and on of things he could have been. Was he the guy that made Magnum TAs have the car accident? Who knows? Who knows what the reveal could have been? Was he the plans in the envelope saying that he was going to be the Black Scorpion? It could have been anything. It could have been saying that this fully reveals that while there was a Midnight Rider here, that was you, Dusty, so now you're both going to get fired. Who knows what was in the envelope? Who knows what the purpose was? It's one of the ones that I wish we really would have gotten an answer to, because it was, at the time, it was something I was really interested in, and I think a lot of people were. Jim Crockett Promotions was white hot at the time, and I don't remember if this was before or after the Turner sale, so it was right around that time. But anyway, like I said, I wish we would have gotten an answer as to what was in the envelope. Potentially something not harmful to Dusty's career. Now, before we get into our number 1, we do a little something here on the top 10s called the best of the rest. Basically stuff that was considered for the list but did not make it. First up, who was Adam Rose's bunny? And this is probably a little bit more on the lighthearted side. We know at times that Adam Rose's bunny was played by Sami Zayn or Tyson Kidd. I believe the reveal was supposed to be Justin Gabriel, but we never got that reveal. We just got the bunny, who all of a sudden went from a guy in a pack of partiers to being a phenomenal wrestler, with no real payoff on what was, I believe, supposed to be a Bunny and Adam Rose feud. Who knows who it would have really been? Who knows what they were thinking at the time? The angle gets scrapped. Adam Rose is not long for the company afterwards. The Bunny angle obviously is not long for the company. But it's one of those things that it's a recent memory that I believe could have both elevated whoever was in the costume and Adam Rose if they chose to pay it off, but they never did. Now, next up on our best of the rest, Hogan laying down for Sting at Halloween Havoc 1999. There was a lot of laying down at this time. There was a lot of kayfabe breaking, fourth wall bending in this time period. Hogan comes out for a match with Sting and just lays down. It's never explained why he did it. It was never explained his motives. There was never an allyship or friendship there. I don't know if allyship is a word. It's probably not. If it is, I just made it up. But anyway, there was never anything explained as to why Hogan would do that. And you kind of know why, because of Hulk Hogan's creative control. He probably threw out a lot, and I'm paraphrasing this from shoot interviews that I've seen with both Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. He probably went to them and said, "This ain't going to work for me, brother," and then didn't have anything to go with, so this was probably the only thing that he would agree on. Who knows what it would have done? Again, it's one of those things. At the time, there was starting to be enough misses that WCW was really sinking. The holes in the ship were being harder and harder to patch. There was less great versus good on the show, whereas before, something like this wouldn't have sank WCW. This kind of hurt it. It kind of hurt the company. It kind of made it look silly. It made it look unimportant. Again, one of their biggest rivalries, and just a nothing match. Now, last but not least, on our best of the rest, coming from the land of WCW as well, Ric Flair getting buried in the desert by the filthy animals. You would think somebody getting buried in the desert would be a major bone of contention, that they would be angry if they made it out of the desert, that they would want to get revenge on the people that did that. That's not the case here. The filthy animals bury Ric Flair in the desert out in Las Vegas, and I believe 3 months later, we just see Ric Flair back on television with no mention of how he got out of the hole, how he got there, no mention of him having a grudge against the filthy animals, no mention of him wanting to get retribution. Why'd they do it? Why was he there? I know there was a rumor that they were going to continue to bury legends, and then the legends were going to form a faction to go against them. However, that never materialized. So again, you have something here, a very traumatic incident that wasn't resolved. And again, like I said just a moment ago, stuff like this started piling up. WCW became more and more ridiculous as the years went on. Not saying there wasn't stuff that was enjoyable still on WCW, because there really was. Go back and watch a lot of that 99, 2000 WCW. There's a ton of crap. I'm not saying there's not. But there's some really enjoyable wrestling on there as well. Some guys that got to really shine. Jeff Jarrett, Scott Steiner, Booker T, Shane Helms at the time, Hurricane Helms later. They all got to shine in those last sputter of WCW. And it's sad that more stuff like this is remembered than the great things that they were doing. Now, before we get into our number one, if you think I put something up too high, something down too low, left something off the list altogether, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think. Also, hit like, share, subscribe if you haven't. Coming up, our number one, who pulled up the briefcase at King of the Ring 1999 in the Steve Austin versus Vince and Shane McMahon match. We see Steve Austin. This is obviously in the middle of the Austin McMahon storyline, and this is where it differs from WCW. While this misstep happened, it was one of a few missteps, not a pile-on of missteps. During the match, Austin goes to climb the ladder, reaches for the briefcase to win the match, and the briefcase keeps raising. Who was controlling that? Who was behind raising the briefcase? It's never said. Was it a McMahon? Was it a new rivalry for Austin? Was it The Undertaker? Was it The Rock? Was it Mick Foley? No one knows. And To me, I think it's one of those things. I put it up here because immediately I wanted to know why. Immediately I wanted to know what the next part of that story was going to be. Is this going to be a debuting wrestler that has heat with Stone Cold? Is it going to be a friend that has been paid off by Vince to turn on Stone Cold? Is it just one of the McMahon family? We don't know, and we'll never know, I don't think. I don't know if there was a plan to reveal who it was. I don't know. I have not heard any rumors, and if there is some out there, feel free to put it down here in the comments. I've never heard rumors on what the payoff was supposed to be on that. But again, because they never said it on television, to me, it's one of the most egregious unresolved storylines. Because here you have the biggest, one of the biggest feuds in WWF/WWE history, one of the biggest feuds in wrestling history, Austin versus the McMahon family, and you have this major hiccup during that storyline. This would be like the Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant feud if it was never explained why Andre the Giant ripped off Hulk Hogan's shirt. If they never explained that Bobby the Brain Heenan got into his head and convinced him to turn on Hulk Hogan, then that moment means nothing. That's why you need to have context. You need to make reason. Although, good moment, you have to have a reason why that moment meant something. And unfortunately, they never explained that to us. That being said, again, let me know what you think. If I put something up too high, something down too low. And if you made it this far in the video, I know you're enjoying what we're doing. Give me a Robert Stack for the unsolved mysteries or unresolved storylines we're talking about here down in the comments. Or you can just put unsolved mysteries if you don't want to put Robert Stack, or put both. Either way. Just let me know you made it all the way to the end. I like seeing the people that have made it all the way to the end. I love your comments. It's awesome. I really do appreciate that. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been a Top 10 Unresolved Storylines in Wrestling.